Dear students, today we will discuss trade and commerce in medieval Europe. This topic is found in your Unit 1 of Rise of Modern West, Chapter 2. So, let us discuss about the trade and commerce. First, we will go discuss on the introduction part. The Middle Ages witnessed a great expansion of trade and commerce between countries in Europe. Prior to this, the society during the early feudalism was essentially a rural society. So, the rise of towns was not something unrelated to feudal society, but a result of its internal development. The development in the productivity both land and labor in the 10th and 11th century provided the feudal lords with an increasing surplus of agricultural products. They could use this surplus either for personal consumption, for their luxury, or for waging war against other feudal lords. In course of time, they encouraged the creation of new centers of trade and commerce, that is the new towns. However, towards the late Middle Ages, trade and commerce was expanding through the development of these new towns, the agricultural revolution and the technological innovations. In towns, trade fairs were hosted as an important venue for merchants to exchange goods and settle accounts. The agricultural revolution also produced surplus food. As trade grew, money transactions replaced the barter system, and by 13th century coins were used extensively and were in high demand. Medieval kings and Italian city-states began to produce their own coins, and banks were established as the need to borrow, standardize, secure, store and transport money increased. Then trade and commerce. The trade and commerce in medieval Europe developed to such an extent that even relatively small communities had access to weekly markets. The markets and fairs were organized by large estate owners, town councils, some churches and monasteries who granted a license to do so by their sovereign. They had hoped to gain revenue from stallholder fees and boost the local economy as shoppers used peripheral services. International trade had been present since Roman times, but improvements in transportation and banking as well as economic development of northern Europe caused a boom from 9th century onwards. For example, English wool was sent in huge quantities to manufacturers in Flanders. Flanders was a city. So, the trade and commerce was kicked off by the Crusaders. The Venetians expanded their trade interest to the Byzantine Empire, and new financial mechanisms evolved which allowed even small investors to fund the trade expeditions across Europe by both sea and land. Now, let us go to the next point, that is the growth of markets. The monarchs had given in the privilege of license to establish markets in villages, towns and large cities. Markets were regularly held in public squares, in wide streets or even in purpose-built halls. Markets were also organized just as outside many castles and monasteries. Usually, the markets were held once or twice a week, but the larger towns might have a daily market which moved around different parts of the city depending on the day or have markets for specific goods like meat, fish, bread, etc. The sellers of particular goods who paid an estate owner, the town or borough council, a fee for the privilege to have a stall or shop were typically set next to each other in areas so that competition was kept high. So, these market system, for your kind information, the present market system you see in today's markets or in your nearby markets is most apparently same as it was in the medieval period. Anyway, so come to the point. So, generally the sellers of meat and bread tended to be men, but women stallholders or women shopkeepers were often the majority, and they sold such staples as eggs, dairy products, poultry and alay. There were middlemen and women known as rigators who brought goods from the producers and sold them to the market. Stallholders or producers might pay a vendor to sell the goods for them. The term regretter means a person who regrets or buys up commodities in advance and sells them for a higher price, especially during a crisis. Besides the markets, the sellers of wares also went knocking on the doors of their private homes, and these were known as hucksters. The term huckster means a person who sells small items door to door or from a stall. So, in present day we can compare them to the street vendors. So, anyway, now let us go for the next point, that is the long distance trade and commerce. The long distance trade and commerce also existed in medieval Europe. Trade of common and low value goods remained a largely local affair because of the costs of transportation, but merchants had to pay tolls at certain points along the road and at key points like bridges and mountain passes, so that only luxury goods were worth transportation over long distance trade. Moving goods by boat or ship was cheaper and safer than by land, but then there were potential losses to bad weather and sea periods or periods to be considered. So, in both rivers and sea you can find the pirates, those who loot the goods taken by the merchants. Anyway, so thus the local markets were supplied by the farmed estates that surrounded them, and those who wanted non-everyday items like clothing or wine had to be prepared to walk half a day or more to the nearest town. Next point is business shops. Besides the markets in towns, the consumer had the additional option of shops for his convenience. The businessmen generally lived above their shop, which represented a large window onto the street with a stall projecting out from under a wooden canopy. So, this we can say that the business shop along with the residence of the traders. So, in today's marketplaces also we do find that there are some shops who had means the shopkeepers had their shop on the front and they resided in the back side of the shop. So there is shop and residence in one place. So anyway, in cities, shops selling the same type of goods were often clustered together in the same neighborhood. Again, to increase competition and make the life of city and guild inspectors easier, sometimes locations was directly related to the goods on sale, such as wholesalers typically being near the city gates so as to tempt the passing travelers, or booksellers near a cathedral and its associated schools of learning. So those trades which involved goods whose quality was absolutely vital, such as goldsmith and armorers, were usually located near a town council's administration buildings, where they could be kept a close eye on by regulators. Towns also had banks and money lenders, many of which were Jews but this giving of money, the money in the form of lending was forbidden by the Christians. As a consequence, by this clustering of trades, many streets acquired a name which described the trade most represented in them, the names which in many cases still survive today. So next point is annual trade fairs. In large towns, fairs were held annually in large scales. Here, people could find a greater range of goods than they might find in their local markets, and traders could buy goods at wholesale rate. Prices also tended to be cheaper because there was more competition between the sellers of specific items. Fairs boomed in France, England, Flanders, and Germany in the 12th and 13th century, with one of the most famous areas of them being Champagne region of France. The fairs, which were held in June and October in Troyes, May and September in Saint Ouen, at Lent in Bar-sur-Aube, and in January at Lagny, were encouraged by the Counts of Champagne, who was provided policing services and paid the salaries of army officials who supervised the fairs. Now, products for the markets. So the traders of wool, cloth, spices, wine, and all manner of other goods gathered from across France and even came from abroad, notably from Flanders, Spain, England, and Italy. Some of these fairs lasted up to 49 days and brought in healthy revenue to the counts. The fairs had such importance that the French kings even guaranteed to protect merchants travelling to and from the fairs. Not only did the fairs of Champagne become famed across Europe, but they were a great boost to the international reputation of Champagne wine, or we can pronounce it as Champagne wine. Actually, this Champagne was a company which has existed even in the medieval Europe. So today we means the people use Champagne wine. So anyway, for many ordinary people, fairs anywhere were a great highlight of the year. People usually had to travel more than a day or to reach their nearest fair, and so they would stay 1 or 2 days in the many taverns or inns, or inn means hotels, which developed around them. There were public entertainments such as the dancing girls of Champagne and all kinds of performing street artists, as well as a few unsavory aspects such as gambling and prostitution that gave the fairs a poor reputation with the church. By the 15th century AD, trade fairs had gone into decline as the possibilities for people to buy goods everywhere and at any time had greatly increased. So, in the next video we will discuss the other aspects of trade and commerce. Thank you.